Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. I'm Penny Reed with eAssist Dental Solutions. Welcome to Onstage, tips for enhanced patient experience. And I'm super excited to be with you as always. Just like those of you that may have many children, I have a lot of different topics that I love, and some that I may on any occasion like more than others. I have to tell you, being on stage and patient experience is something that I am very passionate about. So welcome. We're super excited to have you here with us this evening. And well, let's go on with the show, shall we? So as I mentioned before, I'm with eAssist Dental Solutions. I love dentistry. I've been in dentistry well over 30 years now. I started out as an office manager. My dentist hired me to manage his growing practice. I had never worked in a dental office. I had worked in IT with Walmart and very quickly began to realize that I could use some mentoring and some guidance. And so I also wrote the book called Growing Your Dental Business, which, as I say, is the book that I always wished I'd had as an office manager. So love helping practices grow and love working with eAssist and providing the support that we do to practices for outsourced dental billing. I actually learned about eAssist as an independent consultant before joining the eAssist team and used to refer clients that either didn't have the results that they wanted in their revenue cycle, their dental billing, and didn't have the collections ratio that they wanted, or they had a team member that was amazing and they retired or moved away and we couldn't find an experienced dental biller. So very passionate about helping offices find solutions for that. So at eAssist, we currently provide dental billing solutions for over 2,800 dental practices across the country. And our dental billing specialists on our platform have posted more than $13 billion into practice management systems, have collected that from the insurance companies on behalf of our customers. So super exciting stats. We are the nation's #1 leading dental billing platform. I have a lot of endorsements. One of the ones right in the center we're super proud of. We are the official dental billing solution for ADOM, the American Association of Dental Office Management. And we're also a founding industry partner for Women in DSO and lots of other accolades. So as I mentioned earlier, on with the show. And tonight's topic is on stage. And I really want to take us, I love stories. I love analogies. You'll become, if you've never participated in a program that I've done before, you'll be very aware of that before this one is complete. And when I used to do consulting, I would talk with my clients, I'd be in their office and I would say, hey, let's think of our practice as a Broadway production. There's no business like Smile Business, starring, right? And then we would have our cast, our leading roles, which would be our providers, our dentists, our hygienists, our assistants. Then we have the front office support staff. We may have back office support team. And so if we really think about the dental office like a production, where our patients are our audience, they're our patrons that invest and show up to our shows and support us. And that's what allows us to have the production, to deliver the smiles. If we think about it that way, which I hope you'll follow along that same thought process, if we're going to deliver an outstanding show, we have to have team members on board to be able to get that done. And so whether if you want to drop something in the chat, or you can just sort of think here, oh, actually, we have a poll. I wasn't sure. My team is smarter than I am. We've launched a poll here. If you would like to participate, how many of you are experiencing a shortage of team members? Or if we were talking about the Broadway production, a shortage of cast members. So we'll leave that up for a few more seconds here to see what the results are. The American Dental Association began to talk about the staffing shortage right after everyone came back from offices being closed down with the pandemic. And from what I am seeing and hearing, it is widespread. Hygienists, clinical team members, administrative team members, depending on what area of the country you're in. So All right, let's go ahead and close that poll and see what the results are. Okay, unfortunately, 86% have said I am, and congratulations to the 14% that have said not really. So we want to do the best that we can to help you deliver the ideal experience for your patients, for your audience. And so let's follow along here and continue on the Broadway production. So as I mentioned, I love stories. I also love Onstage, love productions, and I love Disney. So I first learned the terms for business on stage and off stage when I went and did a Keys to the Kingdom tour, the business behind the magic at Magic Kingdom. And they use this analogy to say, hey, we define on stage as everything that happens where your patrons can see. And I was trying to find a picture that I had permission to use of the Magic Kingdom. And well, I found one from the good old family photo archives. I believe this was 2017. Our girls had graduated from high school the spring before, and this was a gift that we gave them. We said, hey, over Christmas break, which I know it doesn't look like Christmas. It didn't feel like Christmas either. It was 90 something degrees. We went and did the Walt Disney World experience in Orlando, Florida. So this would be described as on stage. What the guests, as Disney calls it, see, what the customers see, everything to provide that ideal experience, and we'll relate that directly to the dental practice in a moment. But so on stage would be the things that the cast members see, the things that the patients see, to provide them with that ideal experience. And in the dental practice, these are things that pretty much have to happen there. All right. So that's on stage. That's Brooke and Savannah Reed right there, living their best life at Disney with their parents. So one of the things Maya Angelou said this, and I think Disney has mastered it. People will forget what you said. They may forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. If you're Disney fans, you know what I'm talking about. You approach the park, you hear the music, you smell the smells, and it's an overall experience. And that is why they are, at least at the theme parks, masters at separating their guests from their money, right? So if people are inspired, they rebook their next trip when they come back, whenever that may be. And as I used to say, hey, every trip home from Disney, we come home with our pockets turned inside out, but we do it for that experience as a customer. So how we make our patients feel, which a lot of that has to do with the onstage behavior and what we're able to do when we're face to face with them in the practice. So now let's talk about offstage, or we might call it backstage. So at the Keys to the Kingdom tour, what Disney referred to as offstage was everything that happened behind those walls, behind those buildings, behind those partitions, or maybe in the Magic Kingdom, in the utilidor, in the tunnels up under, or as I learned later, when we did the Business Behind the Magic tour as a leadership retreat for dentists and their teams, we went to the fourth laundry facility. They have many laundry facilities. In the Walt Disney World Resort area, there's a lot of sheets and towels and things like that have to be taken care of on a daily basis. And so we got to take a tour of this amazing facility, actually one of the most requested places to work on the property, smelled amazing, like laundry detergent. That's an offstage activity. Can you imagine if you were walking down Main Street at Disney World and were watching people change sheets from the washers to the dryers, right? Or you were in a restaurant, you were watching them wash your napkins or wash your tablecloths. So they have those duties that do not have to be performed in order to provide for that experience. Those are offstage or backstage. Same for a Broadway production. Lighting, letting people know, hey, getting ready to cue the next person to say, hey, you're on. The other things that happen to make sure that the experience for those that are out front, that are face to face with the guests, with the customers, with the patients, those are defined as offstage. And I will tell you, when I first started in the dental practice, there were really not a whole lot of off-stage duties, at least in our practice back in the day. Almost everything. Now, I might have been over in a corner if I was calling an insurance company to verify insurance or to find out why a claim didn't get paid or to call a patient about a balance. But we didn't have a backstage other than we had a little lab and then we had our sterilization area, but there really was not a lot of offstage area in our practice. I know now with the changing dynamics in dentistry and multiple locations, and often there can be a back office, or even one of my clients, when they ran out of space, rented the building next door and put a couple of their administrative team members in that building. That could also be offstage. So what we hope you'll learn today is understanding the end-to-end patient experience. Going back to then number 2, the most important onstage behaviors that can lead to increased patient retention and also increased top line revenue. And then the third, the crucial yet time-consuming offstage tasks and what to do with them to help you solve these challenges so that you can grow your practice, increase both your top line and bottom line revenue. Because here's what I know from my years of experience as a coach and what we know at eAssist from our co-founders, Dr. James Anderson and Sandy Odell, that we're working to help solve the revenue cycle and dental billing issues for practices. We want to bring you peace of mind. So first, let's start with understanding the end-to-end patient experience. This pipeline, if you've participated in other programs that I've had the privilege to share, is actually our revenue cycle pipeline that we're going to look at a little bit differently today. So when you think about the patient experience, and there's obviously, we could break it down into more detail and spend days on this topic. Yet when we're thinking about big picture, the patient scheduling the appointment, how we talk to them on the telephone, to if they have a plan of benefit, being sure that we have the right information, actually coming in and being seen for a diagnosis, then we present some sort of treatment plan. The patient schedules or they get treatment today, maybe same day treatment, asking them for their requested copay or making that financial agreement for a total treatment plan. Maybe the patient doesn't have insurance. If we're filing insurance, being sure that's done correctly, following up on that claim, posting the payment timely, collecting the balance from the patient, and along the way, asking for referrals, being sure that we're thanking the patient for being our patient, doing all of the relationship oriented tasks. And I know they're not tasks because we mean them sincerely, yet they are tasks from the standpoint of operationally things that should happen when we're with patients. So from looking at this on the revenue cycle pipeline, the onstage interactions for patient experience, and some of these may take place off stage, yet most of the appointments that are being made in the practice, if it's a new patient, I still believe we're making those on the phone. Now, online scheduling has got a lot of momentum and it's growing, and I think that's fantastic. So you could have that be off stage. You could also have a call center potentially scheduling patients for you. The reason that I say that most of this happens on stage is for patient retention. When the hygiene patient is in, most of them should leave with their next appointment. I'll touch more on that in a moment. When we're reviewing the diagnosis and talking with patients about what's most important to them in their oral health, when we're reviewing the treatment plans, that happens on stage, right? So then the patient would schedule if they accept. So patient schedule, if I have to pick between on stage and off stage, I'm still calling that on stage, right? Every patient should be leaving with their next scheduled appointment when they leave the office. All right, insurance verification, that's not highlighted. We'll talk about that in a moment. So we're looking at the ones in gold, being able to see the patient. I know teledentistry is a thing. It will continue to grow. Most of the patients that are being seen for dentistry are being seen face-to-face, elbow to elbow. It's a relationship business that delivers dental health care, right? So we're seeing them in the practice. We're establishing the relationship. we're doing the diagnosis. That's on stage. Presenting the treatment plan. Woo boy, very much on stage. Hopefully with all of the visual aids that we can muster, the intraoral camera photos, any scans that we have, any charting, like periodontal charting that we can show to give them a clear picture of their condition, right? These are, and there may be some practices that have one or two pros that present treatment plans, and maybe they're doing that on Zoom with the patient in the chair in one location, and that individual is somewhere else. Yet the majority of it is happening in the office on stage. The patient then scheduling or going ahead and having the treatment done on stage, all about making sure that they feel focused on. Collecting the patient's portion at the time of service or making those arrangements pre-treatment or at the time of treatment, still on stage. Yes, I know we can send text links for them to do it. Maybe sometimes they're doing that before they come in, yet for the most part, those are on stage. And I'll go more into detail on the on stage, and then later we'll follow up with some of the off stage with the patient experience. So the most important on stage behaviors, there could be more than what I'm listing this evening, yet these were the primary ones that I identified to share with you in this program, in this format. And by the way, I didn't mention this. If you haven't already, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll be happy to get back with you on those at the end of this evening's program. So one of the number one things that we can do on stage is to be sure that our patients feel known and welcomed. And one of the best examples, and I'm often told, or I was when I was still coaching by my clients, you need to come up with some more current and up-to-date examples. Well, I would say this, I think most people have heard of the show Cheers, and they remember when the individuals that frequented that bar would walk into the bar, people would call them by name, right? Norm, right? And so we want to be prepared in the office to know who is coming next. And even if we don't know who they are, we have a pretty good idea of who they may be. So anticipate them coming in. Be sure that you make eye contact, smile. I have a great story about this. I learned a lot of what I learned the hard way. And in the practice that we had initially, it was myself and one other administrative team member back in the day when we were in the early growth mode. And I would sit most of the time in the seat where I could face here, and there could be a patient in front of me checking in or checking out. The actual door to the office was kind of over that way a little bit, and my computer was to my right. So if I in the morning was balancing the day sheet from the previous day, if I didn't get a chance to get that done in the evening, I would be concentrating. I'm not sure what your concentration face looks like, and I'm sure my image is smaller than the slides here, but I had this, even in my 20s, had this little frown line. I didn't look very happy or excited to see whoever it was that came in the door. And so my dentist, who was a great mentor, a great leader, great dentist, he came up to the counter one morning and he said, "Hey, what would you think about us putting a video camera right here?" And it was sort of in between where the door was and where my computer was. And I said, "Why would we do that?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if you realize it, but you're kind of, and I think you're concentrating, you're not smiling. And we really want you smiling and engaging." So what we found was when I needed to do an offstage duty, I would switch places and actually go over to the corner, or if it was a really complicated day close, like maybe there was some payment that was missing, I might even go into his office and shut the door when I did that, because that was an offstage task. Yet I was, not only was I on stage, I was front and center on stage. So be sure that your patients are welcomed. You don't have to say their full name, right? In case you're concerned about HIPAA, but you could say, "Good morning, Jim," or "Good morning, Mr. Smith. It's so great to see you. Let's get you checked in. I'll let the clinical team know that you're here." So Make sure they feel known and welcomed at the front. And then also, just as important, if not more important, chair side, especially if they're a patient of record, ask specific questions more than how have you been doing? Make some notes in your system to follow up on if they had a trip to Hawaii that was coming up or a child that was graduating. Things like that, in my opinion, mean more now in the age of technology than they ever have before. So be sure that we're not so frenzied and hectic. And I know it can be difficult, especially if we have on-stage team members that we're missing and we've got individuals playing multiple roles. So, but be sure your patients feel known and welcomed. I referred to this earlier, and I think this is a great illustration for us to think about, is that every patient at all times should have a dental appointment with your office already on their schedule. And when I say every single one, are there exceptions? Of course. The exceptions that I would intentionally make would be the ones that perhaps have a difficult time keeping an appointment. Maybe we may want to book them on a shorter notice. Next hygiene appointment should be pre-scheduled, in my opinion, before they leave the hygiene operatory. So being sure that they have those. If they don't, on-stage behaviors, using your technology and your patient relationship management software to reactivate those patients, get them back in. If they're not responding to that, I'm still a big believer. One day, those of us that have coached practices and speak may say, don't call them. I'm still going to say, pick up the phone and call them, check on them. But we can prevent more patients from going inactive by the simple practice of not only the administrative team members making sure the patient has the next appointment, clinical team members looking for that as well. And even on the operative side, looking when those patients are in to be sure that they have their next appointment. So it helps build and maintain the relationship and will help grow that top line revenue for sure. And also makes the patients feel important to know that you care enough about them to be sure that they have that done. All right, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time here because I think, well, I know from the hundreds, if not thousands, of practices that I visited, and then more than thousands of the individuals that I have spoken with at different conferences, many practices, if you ask them what makes them unique, or if you're in their office and you're watching and you're listening, a lot of what they do sounds very similar, right? So, and I realize every practice is different. The ones that really set themselves apart by having the largest percentage of their patients not only accept treatment, but also accept ideal treatment, have mastered this one skill. And this is not only a clinical chairside skill, this is a front office administrative team member skill. This is an everyone in the practice adopting a mindset, and I'll talk more about mindset in a moment, that this is more so, and you're going to laugh because this is coming from the revenue cycle management company's chief growth officer, more important to know this, in my opinion, before we know if they have dental insurance, is what's most important to them in their oral health and what their goals are for their mouth and their smile. And we'll circle back to this part. I'll go ahead and repeat this. What's most important to them in their oral health and what are their goals for their mouth and their smile. So here's some other things, and this goes back to making them feel important. What's most important to them? They want to be important to us. They want to be listened to. And I don't mean the multitasking listened to. I mean, pushed away from the computer, eye contact, head nodding, occasionally repeating back, deep listening, a listening that now we're getting so far away from in our personal lives due to smartphones and continuous distraction, but really listening to what they want, not what they do or don't want to pay for, right? We want to find out what their values are before we get to that part, to be focused on, to know that when we're with them, they have our attention. Are we occasionally bantering with another team member? Absolutely. for a handoff or to convey what's going on, or perhaps if we know the patient, but we're not talking over them about what's happening in our personal lives. We're including them in the discussion. They also want us to help them discover what they really want and how to get it. If you've ever done a treatment plan, and I'm sure many of you have, or perhaps you've been chairside with a patient who perhaps because of periodontal disease and bone loss ended up choosing, not just choosing, having to get dentures because things were so far gone, and the look in their eyes and the pain that you see because they didn't have any way of knowing that it would be this way. Now, does it mean that dentures are bad? No. As a matter of fact, with the technology that we have now, I would say having dentures with all on four is a much better solution than what we had 20 or more years ago. Often patients think about what they want today instead of what they want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, from being able to chew, their appearance, their self-confidence. So helping to discover what it is that they want, not telling them what they want, but helping them understand how to get it. And then they also want to simplify their relationship with you. You know, how can we make it simpler to make an appointment, confirm an appointment if they have a question about something that happened with their insurance or with a bill? So it's, these are the primary things that our patients want from us. Other on-stage behaviors, and I also believe this leads to case acceptance as well as getting claims paid. I'm going to get a sip of water here. Is the clinical documentation that tells the story. Dental record keeping is a team sport. Dental reimbursement, dental coding is a team sport. And when we really understand this, and I would say mindset shift, and so many practices do an amazing job with this, to understand that the why that goes into the clinical record, that the doctor's making a recommendation. So the evidence, if we were thinking that we were preparing to make our case, right, in court, or give a persuasive argument for why something should be done, if there is a plan of benefit in place, we want the documentation that tells the story of the patient's current condition and then what the recommended treatment is. That is, it's twofold. One is persuading the patient, inspiring their desire to want the treatment using 3D images, using the intraoral photos, or when appropriate, creating those mock-ups through the Smile engineering programs, right? Where we can show them what they could look like with their smile mocked up. The documentation that tells the story not only helps persuade the patient to pursue what's really important to them, gives them a clear picture of what's going on. It may also give them some takeaways to take home to whoever the co-decision maker is. So if we have intraoral photos or compelling images, print those off, or ask the patient if you can email them to them. Especially for your larger cases, I can assure you that there is a co-decision maker somewhere, someone that is financially impacted by your patient spending that money. Or maybe like what's happening in our family right now, there are multiple family members that have significant treatment plans. So if you have a family that's juggling a $20,000 treatment plan for one family member and a $10,000 treatment plan for the other, the clearer the picture about what's going on and what is needed to solve the challenges that the patients are having, and that documentation is compelling, and we want that to inspire them to schedule and to make that financial agreement. So we definitely want that documentation that tells the story. All right, so I'm going to pause here, and I'm actually going to go back because case acceptance, and I didn't put the slide in here, but I do want to speak to this. If you think about the increased case acceptance like a funnel, so all of the time, energy, advertising dollars, payroll that goes into getting a patient in the door, getting them scheduled, having them come in, doing the treatment plans, talking to them about treatment, persuading them to say yes. And then if it's not same day treatment, getting them back in to actually get the work done. It's a lot, right? And then it comes down to, let's go back to that Broadway production, right? This culminating moment here before the final scene of, are they going to pursue treatment? If so, is it ideal treatment? And I use a very simple example. Is it ideal treatment? Which might be if there's a missing tooth, it could be an implant and a crown, or actually, if there's not a missing tooth, if there's a tooth that needs to be extracted, ideal treatment would be extraction, implant, and crown, perhaps. Or maybe they choose to have a root canal if the tooth could be saved. If that could be an option so a root canal and possibly a buildup in a crown. Maybe they choose to have the tooth extracted and they don't do anything. So technically, if we present an extraction and they do an extraction, you could say, okay, we're 1 for 1. That's not necessarily the type of influence or inspiration that I'm hoping we're able to give to the patients. But the more that we have patients say yes to ideal treatment, it begins to drive everything else in the practice to really make the cash flow work. If not, then we keep having to see more patients, do more diagnosis, not to mention do more marketing to get more patients in. So, and having that trickle down. So the best way to grow the practice through on-stage activities is going to start with increased case acceptance, which then gives you the treatment to be able to schedule the best way, right? To schedule smart and make sure that you have those ideal days. So now we're going to move from on stage to off stage with those tasks and what you can do with some of those that perhaps due to staffing shortages or maybe some other challenges that you may face in the practice, you just don't feel like you're getting the ideal results from. So again, off stage, these are things that directly impact the practice, its efficiency, its growth, and its profitability, yet they're not having to happen in front of the patient while they're in the practice. So this can be for many, it was for me as an independent consultant, a mindset shift. My belief system said, if you have someone, pardon me, working in the practice who is working with the insurance, they know the patients, they know where they work, they're familiar with the companies, they know the patient's family. You have to work in the practice to be able to effectively do the dental billing. That was a mindset that I used to have. And it began to change for me when a colleague of mine couldn't find a replacement for his office manager that retired. He was in a small town in Mississippi. There wasn't anyone with that sort of skill set. He didn't, he's busy doing dentistry, so he really couldn't train them. That was when he made the decision to outsource. So, and many practices do now outsource to various different companies. So I do believe that first it's that mindset shift to look at, okay, if there were a way for us to leverage someone that is offsite, how could we do that? And then really choosing your focus. If you want to provide those ideal patient experiences, to deeply listen, to be able to be at the administrative desk, heads up, not having those frowny wrinkles, looking to see who is that person that's coming in next, being able to call them by name, choose our focus. And so some of you may find yourself during this session thinking, you know what, this may be what is the catalyst to have us consider outsourcing, and starting with what that why is. For what many of our clients have found, outsourcing dental billing and having the pay aligned with the results is a cost savings for them. We see that happen over and over. So let's go back to that revenue cycle pipeline and look at the offstage tasks of the patient experience. So one big one, insurance verification. So could this be done in your practice? Absolutely. Here's what I found as a coach. That was one of the first duties when the practice got busy and people said, hey, I don't have time to do that, that didn't get done. So we knew that insurance verification was important, but often if we were shorthanded, it was be sort of like sweeping off the stage after the production, right? If it wasn't something that had to happen, well, it then creates a domino effect that can set things awry and create many, many dental billing issues. So I would say number one, being sure that it's done. The other is, and I love technology, love, love, love it. I'm an early adopter of technology. I have been since I was very, very young. When I got my first computer, I wanted to know how to take it apart, put it back together, how to install my own CD-ROM drive or tape backups. Technology is great. And for patient eligibility and for a lot of the basic verification, it's fantastic. For some of the more detailed information that you may want, for some of the bigger cases, it does require what we call that last mile, which would be the human component of having a team member, whether it's in your office or outsourced, on the phone with that payer to confirm what those benefits are. The average amount of time on the phone per individual calling an insurance company is about 45 minutes. So that can be for insurance verification, or over here on the far right, following up on a claim for payment, and with which you may or may not get results from that. So when we're paying people by the hour, I mean, we do the math. If someone's on the phone all day with insurance companies, they may or may not get in touch with more than 7 or 8 payers during the business day, especially if they're handling other on-stage duties. So insurance verification is one of the first things that we see and that we hear that dental practices are looking to outsource. So that is an area that can be handled off stage. The other is being sure that claims are sent correctly. I'm going to true confessions here. When I worked in the dental practice years ago, which it was different back then, I remember when we first got connected to do electronic claims, we actually had a little box in the office that hooked into the computer. And when it would transmit the claims, it made that crackling noise like fax machines, which I just thought it was amazing. But it was different, but we did get a rejection report that we would look at, but we didn't scrub our claims back then to be sure they were clean. Just call me naive, which I was. I think I had 1 week of training when I initially started. So we didn't start out reviewing, being sure that they all were going out correctly. Now we did some, like we knew when we were filing them paper wise, hey, if it's a crown, we might need to send a preoperative x-ray. If it was periodontal treatment, we needed to send the periodontal charting. So now more than ever before, and it's those that have been out of bounds that tend to ruin the experience for the rest of us, right? Maybe they filed for things that they didn't do, or maybe, and I've heard of this happening, they use the same set of x-rays for every single claim that they file. Like they have x-rays from one patient. Now with artificial intelligence, insurance companies are, they can now catch that. So, but being sure someone going through, looking through every single claim, is the clinical documentation there? If there is any sort of narrative, we have to remember that there's a little bitty text box that I think holds less than a tweet in characters on that claim form. We may type more of it, but only a little bit of it's getting through. So if we have, put any other clinical notes in there as an attachment, we want to be sure that we're using that space correctly, being sure that the clinical notes provide the evidence, as I mentioned, the clinical notes and supporting documentation, the evidence for why this claim should be paid. Then timely follow-up on claims for payment, being sure that claims, once they reach close to that 30-day mark, are being followed up on every 14 days. All of these tasks, again, I've seen it over and over when they're handled in the practice. If we get busy, they're some of the ones that get shoved to the back. The direct impact is less than a 98% or greater net collections rate. And it ultimately falls to the bottom line and the practice owners that are not fully getting paid, or potentially the associates if they're paid on a commission for collection. So following up on those claims routinely for payment. Next, being sure that payments are posted timely. We hear stories at eAssist that it's like, hey, we haven't had anyone in this role, we're behind. And occasionally someone on our team is calling to follow up on a claim for payment because a patient's called in and the insurance company's already paid. and we don't have it posted. It's either already sitting in our bank account and the EFT hasn't been reconciled, or it was a paper check and it is somewhere in our office attached to an EOB. Heartbreaking story. So we want to be sure that as soon as a claim is paid, that if it's a paper check, that is entered in. We know a lot of offices prefer to get those paper checks and not get those credit cards that a lot of insurance companies want to send, where now you're getting reduced reimbursement due to PPO participation, perhaps. And then you're also having to pay a merchant fee on top of that. So posting in a timely manner of those claims, so that any balance that wasn't taken care of through a financial agreement earlier can be collected in a timely manner for the patient. So I learned years ago, and every bit of research that I've done, I still believe this holds true, that once a balance, and this is not a dental specific stat, it does apply to dentistry. Once a balance reaches 90 days or over, the percentage of that amount that's actually collected drops to between 33 and 35%. So when we look at those accounts receivable and we look at that amount that's over 90 days, just based on the way things go, right? As my dad would say, that's just the way it is. Statistically, you will not collect all of that. So it's not a someday we'll get caught up on collections. There's a lot of that money, if it gets that far out, that we're just not able to get. So these are some of the duties that can totally be handled off stage that do positively or negatively, if not done in an ideal way, impact the patient experience. So out of curiosity, with our audience here this evening, we have another poll. If my fabulous teammate, and look, she did it again, gets that launched. How much money is in your over 90 days outstanding insurance receivables per location? So this is completely anonymous. Would love to have you participate with this. We'll give you a moment or two to do this, and I'll share with you where the benchmark really should be. And an aha that I had after I came to work for eAssist. I've been with eAssist now close to 3 years. And if you've ever heard of the story, right, of the 4-minute mile, everyone thought years ago, there's no way that anyone can run a mile in under 4 minutes, until Roger Bannister did it. And then you would see the next person, like one after another, began to run this 4-minute mile because they knew it was possible. So one of the awarenesses that I had was that the insurance over 90 days, that it was actually possible for that figure to be at zero or near zero. Now, I want to put a peg in that for a moment and say, here's what that doesn't include. So if you are an orthodontic practice, or you're a general practice that does orthodontics or Invisalign, where the treatment is spaced out and you've not used a third-party payment plan for that, and perhaps the patient paid $1,000 or $2,000 in advance, and then there's another $3,000 that's being paid every month until the end of treatment. So it's a long-term treatment plan. If those are in your system set up on payment plans, they will not show up in your accounts receivable unless an installment is past due. So if I was your patient and my installment payments were $150 a month, and that wasn't something that was being paid to Care Credit or a company like that, it was something I was paying directly to you. If that went over 90 days, it would show $150, not the entire balance that I owe, if that's on a payment plan. So if we get those payment plans for long-term treatment, like an orthodontic case, and set those aside, that your over 90 outstanding insurance can be at zero or near zero when all of the other revenue cycle processes are in place. And that is something that one of our goals to do with our customers is to be working on that with them. So let's see what the poll, here we go. So we had 14%, less than 1,000. Fantastic. Congratulations. About 71% between 10 and 20,000. We have definitely seen that, and that is something that can definitely be worked on and reduced. And then we have some that said, I have no idea. And we hear that as well. So thank you for participating in that. And it definitely can be done. Exciting to hear that some of our attendees are experiencing some of those positive results as well. Okay, so offstage tasks that you can outsource, and I'm using things that eAssist does or that our partner companies do. Doing the outsourced dental billing and insurance aging. So being sure the claims go out the door clean, getting them filed, following up in a timely manner, posting in a timely manner, following back up with the insurance company, and also being sure that if claims are rejected or denied, that they're appealed. And we have dental biller specialists on our platform that sometimes appeal claims 3 and 4 times. And because of how we're compensated as a company, we don't get paid unless you get paid. So if this is someone that's being compensated hourly, you could, in theory, end up paying more in payroll than you actually could be collecting on a claim that's been denied or rejected. So that's how the dental billing can work. Insurance verification and eligibility, that can be done standalone, or it can be an add-on to dental billing. Then the patient portion, statements and billing. If you, and I'll finish going through here, wanted to outsource your entire revenue cycle to eAssist, you could. So this is an add-on to the dental billing that we can actually take care of the statements and following up with the patients, provision a phone number where it looks like we're part of your team. All of those phone calls, instead of coming through to your office, would come straight to the dental billing specialist handling that. So you can also outsource your dental practice accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll. And this can be really great. It brings a lot of peace of mind to many dental practice owners that there's someone different handling that than the ones in the office, where sometimes, depending on the size of the practice, it can be uncomfortable if you have a team member in the practice that knows everything about the numbers in the practice. Many times it's totally okay if that does happen because the office manager knows, but he or she may not have the bandwidth to be doing the bookkeeping, and you rely on them to tell you what the results are, not necessarily be the one to enter all the payments and reconcile that. Insurance ready credentialing and fee schedule updates. While eAssist can help you with fee schedule updates, one of our latest partners that's joined us as part of the eAssist family is Unitas PPO Solutions. And they are the pros at credentialing and contracting. So this is something that we can help you with as well through Unitas. And then also full schedule, patient recall and retention. You can outsource having someone call and check on your patients and keep your schedule full. So these are some offstage tasks to outsource. And I wanted to highlight some of the advantages to outsourcing, and also to outsourcing to us specifically. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that have come over. Advantages can be that it's less expensive than hiring a full-time employee. And depending on the size of the practice, most of the offices that work with us get at least 2 dental billers assigned to their account. So you don't have the worry of vacation coverage or maternity leave coverage, that there's always someone working those accounts. The other is paying for results instead of time. It's a paradigm shift, and it really aligns the practice. What we find is when we run those numbers to see what an office would be spending to replace someone in-house, that it is much more cost effective to do that through outsourcing. So it solves the geography problem. If you're in a small town in Mississippi, you may not have a whole lot of prospects for finding someone that has the experience to do dental billing. So you can find a great talented person. Maybe you're in Mississippi and maybe they're in Arkansas, right? Or they're in Idaho. So it's more about finding the right talent that knows the software and has that expertise versus how far away they are from your office. And then I mentioned earlier, not relying on only one employee. We've all seen it happen. It's painful when that trusted person that's been handling that for years leaves, they move away. And it can create a lot of stress. So let's worry about turnover, having an expert team, having proper checks and balances, having different hands in the accountability. And I remember, I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next slide. This was something that I was taught early on in the practice, is that we would have one person on the team enter the payments and from the mail, and also running the credit cards and doing the walkouts, and then another person on the team that would go in and verify that everything was correct. So it keeps honest people honest, and having great checks and balances here. So our competitive advantage is we have vetted dental billers that have specialties with different softwares that work on our platform. Based in the USA, they have aligned incentives. As I mentioned, eAssist doesn't get paid unless you get paid, and they're all aligned to be sure that happens because they're in the exact same boat, that they don't get paid on the dental billing unless you do. Frequent reporting. I loved as a consultant, the daily, weekly, and monthly reports that came over. Let me know exactly what the dental billing specialists were doing that were supporting the clients that I worked with. Having more than one person on the account, the checks and balances, and being sure that you have a secure platform. So those are some of the advantages to outsourcing, and to outsourcing specifically to eAssist. So I'm going to show you an example here and quote one of my favorite business experts, Peter Drucker. So he says, what gets measured gets managed. He also said, culture eats tactics for breakfast. So when we're talking about the whole providing that patient experience and using the analogy of the Broadway production and being on stage and engaging with patients, the same guy that talked about culture talks about measuring things. So what I loved as a coach, and always looking at monitoring, and this is an example here, using the name of one of Dr. Anderson's practices. These were not real stats, but just to give you an example of the tracking. So you want to know production and collections, the collection ratio, how many claims are outstanding, the total insurance receivables, the total patient account receivables, and more. How many claims were denied? How many were downgraded? How many were appealed, and how many were successful? How many of the claims were submitted within 24 hours, what the percentage was. And so even though you may not be seeing an outsourced dental biller working on your accounts, you're seeing what the activities are and the fruits of that. And unless you're in a large organization that perhaps has centralized billing and maybe some internal reporting, in most practices, what I've found is we know that the individuals working on the dental billing and the dental insurance are super busy, yet we're not exactly sure what results that they're getting. So speaking of results, our latest stats are the dental billing customers that use our platform experience an average of a 17% increase in collections after 60 days using our platform services. So, and the average collection percentage of where offices were coming to us from was around 96% using that stat. So we love delivering peace of mind. We also love assisting in delivering increased cash flow and helping it be a win-win or a win-win-win, right? It's a win for us to be able to serve you, a win for you because you're able to collect what you're rightfully owed. So it's a win for you and your team, and also a win for the patients that we're advocating for them, for their insurance company to do the right thing and the fair thing and pay on behalf of the patient what's rightfully owed. So before I answer a couple of questions here, to thank you for coming today, we have a QR code here. So there's a free ebook if you would like it, Essential Strategies for Improving Your Dental Practice Revenue, brought to you by our parent company, Henry Schein, eAssist, and also eAssist Practice Booster, which is our educational arm that teaches coding and dental administration. Wonderful branch of eAssist. So you're going to learn tangible strategies in the three key areas of revenue cycle. So the claims reimbursement, CDT codes, PPO reimbursement. So scan that QR code, That is our gift to you for participating. And then if you would like to connect with one of our business development specialists, you know that you already would like to find out, do a little bit of a revenue health assessment and talk to one of our specialists to see how we may be able to help you. You may scan this QR code and do that as well. You could also email learn more at eassist.me, or you can scan this QR code and be taken directly to an avenue to be able to connect. So I appreciate all of you being here and being so engaged, and am happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening. Well, it could be that I handled the subject adequately for you, and you don't have any questions this evening. That's totally okay. As always, we're here to help, because we're co-founded by a dentist. We're always passionate to provide education for you. Thank you guys so much for being with us here this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, everyone.